delighted to have today my partner in life, Janet Surrey, whom I've known for 50 years, and she and I have almost never spoken together about my work and her work, and it's just going to be great.
Welcome to Conversations with Shem. Our focus is to show how to put the human back into healthcare.
Welcome to another episode. We are thrilled once again to have on one side of this conversation, Dr. Shem. He's the author of The House of God and Man's Fourth Best Hospital, and also a professor of medicine and medical humanities at NYU Grossman Medical School. And sitting across from him, usually I say virtually, but this time actually sitting across him in real life is Dr. Janet Surrey, a clinical psychologist and insight dialogue Buddhist meditation teacher who has collaborated with Shem not only by being his life partner, but also in writing and producing an off-Broadway play, as well as co-authoring 2 books together. Well, I welcome you both to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is a very, very rare and wonderful time to be with my dear partner of almost 50 years now, to talk about our shared values, our shared innovation and resistance, and just our shared love, let's face it. So, how do you want to start?
Well, it's just a pleasure to be able to be here, and I always love the chance to reflect on sort of how the personal and the professional and the writing all intersect. And to most people know me as Barry from The House of God, or know of this character that I live with, as well as living with this character Shem, along with sort of double track. So I'm happy to be with you and reflect in any way, since this is a series, what you have been reflecting on and how you might want my sort of perspective on your work, your career, the whole of it. My view, having watched you all these years, and worked with you, and just this tremendous number of years of companionship. So, but it's lovely to be invited in to reflect on that with you.
Right, and sharing, and sharing our daughter, of course.
Co-parenting is the central part of it all.
That's the central part of it all. And we're still doing that
well, we co-parent books and plays as well. So just the process of being with life in many forms. So
I think one of the things we were thinking of is the idea of healing, becoming more human in medicine, and how we and I made that journey from early on all the way up to now. It's just astonishing. And I like to say, if a butterfly's wing had gone one side or the other, none of this. I'd be a divorced alcoholic surgeon on the Harvard faculty right now. So you
from a historical perspective, that
Yeah.
kind of touched me back to you standing at the Harvard Medical School in your senior year in college. We were planning a certain life that didn't happen in that way, but you were planning to go to, very happy to be going off to medical school, and instead went to England, and your life was
That's
transformed,
right.
as mine was in the women's movement at
That's
that
right.
time. So
That's right.
just watching you move from, and yet the continuity of it, the kind of interest in medicine and healing, and a kind of career in science. And then you took the turn in Oxford to writing, to really a devotion to something that was a lot harder and a lot further for you, and just made that commitment. And I've watched how that commitment to writing has now become what I call writer healer. So that the writing itself becomes a kind of way of healing and a way of connecting. So in fact, it was, you turned away from it, but in a certain level, you did not turn away from it. You just found your own way with it, in your own very unique way.
Turning away from, or not turning.
From traditional medicine.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But yet still staying in the heart of medicine, of healing and of connecting, and a deep energy and intention to be a healer.
Yeah.
And that even in writing your first book, which was in some way a healing for you after your internship, The House of God, a way of reworking it and understanding it, but also in the context of writing it with all your friends who you were working with. And it was a shared healing in a certain way of making sense of what had happened during internship.
Yeah.
So it was healing in the personal sense, but what's really been remarkable is watching it in the world. Its own, making its way in the world, in its own. It's almost, I mean, it's you, but it sort of has its own life, and it's led you now, as well as you leading it. It's led you now.
That's right. That's right.
Into who you are today, into the world as a speaker and spokesman. People kind of calling you forth to speak about being human in medicine and to think about your book more. I mean, you just wrote it.
That's right.
But
That's right.
you didn't sit there thinking, what is this? And is this resistance? And is this really healing? No, it came from the heart. And then you've been reflecting as people have had many responses to it. But watching you emerge as a spokesperson for the human in medicine, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I really appreciate that. And both of us were formed by the 60s and 70s by, we were radicalized to think of things like humane medicine, or, connection is important in relationships, like you led the whole Wellesley people in this new way of looking at.
It was a willingness to look at taking the feminist movement and taking it into psychology, which was, what would women have to say about psychological development? Not trying to be like men, but you having a unique perspective coming out of being the holders of relationality and caregiving and maternal practice. So that had been marginalized and relatively invisible in psychological theory.
Yeah.
So being able to put that front and center, and to share, and then to have you with women, and to have you come and really listen deeply and share that work in the gender work that we did. That is,
well, I've been so lucky with our relationship. I mean, there have been very difficult times, of course, but the two things that I sort of took a daring jump to go with you too
Mm.
were joining you in the Wellsleek group and you're helping me to write a relational psychology for the development of men, which is rather strange and nobody could get it. And now I think maybe they're getting it a little better. But the second thing, I mean, you're just in some ways at really important times of my life, you've come through. I'm thinking of being depressed after a couple of books, and we were just starting to follow a spiritual teacher, Vimala Thakkar, and I remember standing outside the door here in the cold, freezing cold, and you were about to go to Holland to go to a 2-week, was it? I think a 2-week retreat. Listening to, and I had heard her once or twice, but she didn't really make too much sense to me. And I remember standing there, and we were not really settled in where we were going together. And something sort of made me say, "Do you mind if I come with you?" Remember that?
Mhm.
And so and at that retreat, because I was quite depressed at that time, and I opened up to this wonderful teacher, and Janet's wonderful participation in teaching just changed my life, absolutely changed my life. So those two things are, where I have been wondering what the hell am I doing? And you have been incredibly valuable and wonderful about, oh, well, how about Buddhism? How about
This is so interesting
spirituality?
because my work right now is on what I call spiritual friendship, which is a friendship based on really supporting each other's most full development and most deeply connected to one's spirit and values and creativity. And, it just strikes me that we've been spiritual friends
Yeah.
from, college, and the sense of moments where we've each kind of pointed and helped each other towards being who we are,
Yeah,
and the expression of that, and moments of saving each other's lives.
That's right. That's exactly
And moments of creativity together, and moments of tremendous difficulty, because relationships are very, very difficult over time. You can't, and they're always in movement, so they're always alive and always needing to be tended to. So,
Yeah.
but it's kind of, so that sort of strikes me in hearing you, that there's this deep kind of special friendship at the core of it, of really, and walking each other through life.
Yeah.
And part of that is how the work and life intersect. And I think that's one of the things that we've experienced together, which is very personal, and also how our work has been kind of folded into that at times. We both have our separate work, and then we've had shared work that's been so beautiful, because I've brought you into my world and I've gone into your world. I would never have had the opportunity to be off Broadway twice and three times and live in New York and be in the theater world. It's just like amazing.
I mean, that was a dream of mine. So I've been trying to write plays and all that. And wouldn't you know it, a solo play by me never really made anything happen. But when Janet came to me and said, well, why don't we write a play together? We've written a book about male-female relationships, but why don't we write a play together? And she said, why don't we write about, I just read some stuff about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember we were sitting on a rock at the ocean, and she told me the story, and I said, oh my God, this is a fantastic, never been told before, spiritual, physical, medical, because one of them was a doctor. And you remember, together, we saw how it had to open and close, the beginning and the end. The beginning had to be of two guys standing up on a stage and just starting to talk to the audience.
I mean, what's really core, I think, to say in this moment is that, that there's the theme has been, but for both of us, and then together, really throughout the whole of life.
Yeah.
On really, what is it to stay alive in the world in a real way, in a wholesome, in a way that benefits others, and that taps creativity
Right.
and makes a contribution to the world in some way. And this sort of relational element, spiritually, politically, medically, psychologically, and spiritually, has really been around, and been the kernel and the heart of your work, my work, and our work together.
Mhm.
So there's, when you reflect on that, it's a very great privilege to have have that opportunity, to have experienced that together. And then here we are now. So new world, always.
I don't think,
Post-pandemic, post having lived in this way, now what? And then we're
Well,
in that threshold together right
had
now.
matching COVIDs.
Right, right. Simultaneous, right?
Yeah.
So, but I also just, this is your kind of series, and I feel like I've watched you unfold too in your writing and your speaking and your teaching and your being a voice in the medical world, both for speaking truth and the willing. I mean, I've seen people that remember, the most alive memory I have is in Germany
Yeah.
with this young man asking, how do you have the courage to speak? I could never speak like that. And I think that sense, and that's what people have really responded to, the authenticity, no fooling around, and your own ability to do that in fiction, so that there's almost a surreal, which is realer than real quality that has touched people so deeply. And I've watched that sense of being touched, of being amazed at the courage and authenticity and the humor and the craft of it, but also, this deep searing kind of sense of following what's important and what's real beyond, even if it involves resistance or saying no to something, and being able to do that with fierce courage and humor. It's just amazing, absolutely amazing touch. And some people see only the humor, and they don't they can't quite get, how can there be this seriousness when they're so funny? But you have your own touch, and watching that unfold, it's really pretty amazing.
Yeah. I'm astonished now too, because when I, at this age, it's like people they haven't read the in-between books. They kind of think I've been dead or something, and here I am talking about these things all over the world. It's really quite remarkable. First trip to a tour of Germany, and I was in this wonderful Charité hospital, the oldest hospital there is in the West. And that guy asked, how could you possibly do that? And the thing that I realized over the course of all this, run on fear. I run on guilt. I can get very guilty, but I don't anticipate very much. And sometimes that causes a lot of problems in the relationship, but I just go, and because I have no idea why, but it seems to be the thing that I'm, it's what I'm here for.
It's just so interesting that when you follow a thread in your life, you're listening and following it in some way, honestly, there's a path but it's never beforehand. It's just not like something you chart out. What I'm going to do in 5 years, what I'm going to do. Like that sort of notion of life. And we have to think like that. That's part of life. But this kind of deeper sense of following something important and letting it, and like I said, you following your book. It's like you've been following the House of God has had its own life and shown up here and here, and you've kind of been following it and kind of being Shem. I mean, this is the other interesting thing. People always ask me, what's it like to be a character in a book? And, I say, for a while, it was very distressing. And then I realized it's just like Shem is part of you, Barry is part of me, I mean, it's a me that's fictional, but she runs alongside like Shem does.
It's so bizarre.
But I don't. It doesn't feel so personal,
Yeah.
and it also feels there's kind of a sweetness of being in the public. This is kind of like the public realm and the private realm and how they intersect. That you have this persona in the world, and that's part of who you definitely are, and that's true with me as well. But you know, this kind of and feels so good to make the personal real, in a sense, to bring to, like, just now in this moment, it feels like being who we are, and then sort of discovering that in a public realm as well, that it's not so separate, that we can heal whatever division between the public and the private realm, because there is for people. So it's like a persona.
Yeah.
And so that kind of deep authenticity of being able to be true to who you are, wherever you are.
Yeah.
And I think that, and that it's kind of like so hard to get, but it's like breaking through the what's in the way.
Yeah.
And sometimes one breaks through by deep feeling. Sometimes you do it, sometimes with writing, and you do it. It's almost like tearing something down in order to get to what's real and important. It's just, there are many ways to do that, and many forms.
And you know, the two of us are really, really just trying to keep it simple, just trying to do the same thing, which is to live a human life and to help people through their lives. And at this age,
to learn and to
learn.
to be,
Right.
as Vimo says, a student of life.
A student of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just astonishing now. You know, I look back and say, what? What?
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
very strange. And it helps me. I mean, I really write better than I talk in a way. And it takes me like a book to really get at what I really feel and think and know about this. Now, you know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking about the book At the Heart of the Universe, which was not a very popular book because it wasn't strictly about medicine, and it was because it was based on Janet and I going back to China when our adopted Chinese daughter, we adopted her as a baby, was 8 actually. And I just jumped into this. How could the birth mother, if she wanted to try to find her, do it? And I spent, you know, years writing this book. And that's how I came to understand. And when we three, you and me and Katie, went out on the stage at Soho Playhouse just to talk about this. Just incredible.
So Katie kind of was brought into it a little bit.
Yeah,
People started asking her, "What's it like to be a character in a novel?" It's like, there we go. But you know, she's very proud of you. And kind of startled. I don't think she's read much of what you've written. A little bit, yeah. Yet she will.
Well,
but
yeah.
it's just interesting question of how much children can really take in who their parents are, because there's so much their parents, and there's so much around that for kids. It's very hard to and I think but really important to be able to see who the parent is in their fullness. But boy, it's hard with mothers, huh?
Yeah.
I think it's even harder with mothers than fathers.
It is, yeah. She did read one of my books. I think she only read one of my books, The Spirit of the Place, which is my best book, really. So she read it because it was an assignment. You had to read one book over the summer. You know, remember she took it to Costa Rica with us. And so she didn't say anything after she read it. I said, "Did you read it?" "Yeah." And she said, I said, "Well, how'd you like it?" She said, "Good." That was it. I spent 5 years reading this book. Good. Anyway, so what else have we not covered here? I think, the enormous shift that you are helping to make in Buddhist practice and teaching is just something I admire so much, and it's just so right for you. You do in, talking and being there what I do more in writing. We're different, but it's amazing how the themes are just the same. And of course, I have followed you into you as a teacher. You as a teacher are in our house every Wednesday morning for an hour. Anybody who wants to come can. For how many years now?
About 30.
30 years. Same, one of our rooms where we have a meditation for every week. Everybody, it always goes on. It's amazing. I'm so happy to love you. Well, that was really very emotional and very satisfying, and it was just because we, I guess, could talk and show how two people can get together and what they live and make and create in a moral and a humanistic sense and a loving sense is just possible. It's just possible. That's all I'd say.